Welcome to Talent Takeover
Unfiltered.
When it comes to working hard and keeping it real, we know our shit. Self-care, happiness, inner peace, and time. I'm Brianna Rooney, and this is Taylor Bradley.
Hey, y'all.
And we have thrived in chaos and turned it into an art form. So Taylor, what are we doing here today?
We're here to give you a raw, under-the-hood view of all things recruiting and finally give credit where credit is due to a long underrated industry that's full of quote-unquote experts.
All right. Well, then let's take this show to the road.
Last chance to join our exclusive Millionaire Recruiter program. Now, over this last year, I have really enjoyed helping people start their own recruiting agency. But the fact is, the recruiting world is finally heating up again, thank God, which means so is my agency, Talent Perch. And I don't want to spread myself too thin or my team. So we're doing only one more Millionaire Recruiter program. So this is your last chance to turn your passion into profit with our intensive 16-week coaching program. It's 2 a week, digital course, branding assistance, and content creation support. This program starts, yes, very soon, October 3rd, and it will end in February, which is perfectly timed for next year's hiring surge. So don't miss the final, literally the final opportunity for unmatched mentorship with me and my team. We spend a lot of time with you to make sure that you are successful. So act now to secure your spot and make your recruiting agency dreams come true.
Hello, welcome to Talent Takeover Unfiltered. We are coming with you with another amazing topic, which is emotional intelligence needed in recruiting. Which y'all know how I feel about this. Taylor, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, we always have fun when we record our podcast, and it's a great vibe. And it's like, these are the conversations that I need to start my day. If you've listened to our past episodes about the negative conversations to start your day, I always have a good day when we record our podcast and we talk we shoot the shit. We also talk about the market and trends and recruiting, which we both love and are passionate about. So yeah, it's a good day. How about you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I'm super jazzed. And I will have to say, like, shout out, what's it, Recruiter Flow? I'm trying to think who put our podcast out there, but like, we have been getting recognized more and more for our podcast, which, you know, when we first started it, it was like, let's just shoot the shit. It strengthened our relationship, it strengthened our business, like all of these things. And we just love talking talent. And yeah, so some of the podcasts who have been out for years, people who have done this longer than us. So it's really cool to be on those lists. So thank you, listeners, so much. Thanks for the reviews. Thanks for all that. It's freaking awesome.
Thank you. Like we appreciate it. We really do. And I think anybody who reaches out to us on LinkedIn knows how much we appreciate it, because there's not a single person that reaches out to me that says they listen that I don't get back to, and it's not lost on me ever, you know, how amazing it is that we're able to actually do this and have this platform, and people actually listen and they find value in what we're saying, and you know, they think it's funny too. So I'm like, hey, yeah, this is not a bad way to start your day.
I feel like we just had like an acceptance speech with no award.
No fucking award. We're like, no. Well, we're grateful. I think we're coming from a humble spot of like, we're grateful that people listen. If it was 5 or 500, and I mean, to be across, how many different countries are we in? Like,
I don't even know. We'd have to ask.
Yeah, but it's something. It's yes, for sure. It's more than I even knew existed, to be honest with you. So that's but thank you guys. And so, getting into our episode today, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, as Brianna said, in recruiting. So let's kick this off. I know this was something that you wanted to talk about and were passionate about. So like, what prompted this?
Well, I think it's the bad shit you see that prompted it. No, what, you know what? I think that, well, I have been getting interviewed a lot more recently, which is always fun. And I'm always asked like, hey, what do you wish you would have done sooner in your career? And first of all, it's always coaching, so executive coaching, but that went hand in hand with my emotional intelligence training. Mm-hmm. I did that very late in my career. I'm looking to do it again. I think it's just one of the most powerful learnings, teaching ever going for my relationships, for my business, for just everything. It's been really powerful. And so I think that's why I'm like, hey, I think we need to talk about this more. And then what's really interesting is like, you can teach someone the very like basics and fundamentals of biz dev, of recruiting, of candidate experience, like all like the stuff that we do, you know, as a recruiter. But if people don't have the emotional intelligence behind it, they're going to keep, you know, they're not going to soar. And so I really think that is the difference, is that the soft skills in order to know that is like someone could have the same exact hard skills, but there's so many reports that show 3 to 5 times the soft skills person, makes more money, makes 3 to 4 times more money than the hard skills. Like that's insane to me. So it's like we have to start talking about this. And if even if you're not in recruiting, this is a really powerful subject to talk about. But yeah, if you don't have emotional intelligence in recruiting, like I'm sorry, like you got to find another job.
And I think we should talk about like what and define for people what emotional intelligence is, and then talk about how it affects recruiting. But emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, manage, and effectively use emotions in yourself and others. And so developing EI can lead to better interpersonal relationships, communication, and overall well-being. I think that's really powerful. It's understanding, managing, and effectively using emotions within yourself and others. And I'm like, wow. I mean, everybody can apply that to any part of your life, but obviously we're talking about recruiting. So I think getting into how the ways in which this affects recruiting directly and just anything like self-awareness. I think that's really, really, really powerful is self-awareness in recruiting as a recruiter, as a candidate. We're talking about the whole recruiting cycle as a hiring manager, self-awareness, paying attention to your emotions throughout the day. How are you showing up on calls? How are you showing up to other people? What is the perception that people have of you? What triggers you have? I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
Like identifying what your triggers are. And I think you've talked about it a little bit before, but one of your triggers I know is the help word versus like assist. But I think you also have the self-aware, like, that's one of your triggers, but you also have the awareness enough to know that like when someone says that to you, they're not being negative, but it still is triggering for you. But if somebody asks you, hey, can I help you with this? You're not like triggered and go off or lose it or like,
no, not at all. I now have identified it, but like when I was younger, I didn't identify it. I took it as like, what do you think, I can't handle this? Like I can do this on my own. Yeah, for sure. Communication and words and, we always laugh about this, the ASAP, what that mean to people, but it's like, but everything means something different to somebody. And, at the end of the day, communication is a sales technique. Like, I think that's, if you want to really go back to, hey, how is this going to help me in my job? Well, guess what? You'll have more sales because you can communicate well. You can read the room. I actually just taught my kids yesterday what reading the room was, and I thought of you because you say that a lot. God, read the room. They're like, she's like, how do I read a room? I can't read that well.
I mean, I think we need to have a whole like training on this. We need to have a whole, because reading the room, and I was actually talking to Aaron about this like a week or so ago. We had a whole conversation about the ability to read the room and how valuable of a skill that is to have. And not everybody has it. And so it's like, how do you teach your kids how to read the room? You know what I mean? So like, I'd love to know what you taught your kids and like, you can read the room. I can read the room. We know we can read the room, but like, I can't pinpoint something that was taught to me that made me have the ability to read the room, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because you have to pinpoint it. Well, okay. Well, let me just very quickly tell you the story. So Lima goes, how quickly can I do this? Lima goes, have you ever been pooped on by a bird? And I was like, oh, let me tell you. So like, I used to hate birds growing up. And I also used to get pooped on by a lot of birds. And so I told him, like, I don't know what came first. But one time after I was like swimming with the dolphins, someone put a parrot on my head. And there's the most funny picture. I have to find it. It's the funniest picture where I'm like, by the way, you guys can see this on the Millionaire Recruiter YouTube. So yeah, I just did that face, but like, it's the worst picture. And for some reason, after that bird was on my head, I decided birds were okay. And knock on wood, I have not got pooped on since. I'm not kidding you. Like, my mom would always make fun of me how much I got pooped on by birds. So
I thought it was a sign of good luck to get shit on by birds.
Oh, fuck no. No, that's just like what people say, like when, it's rain on your wedding day, it's just things to make you feel better.
It's one of those. That's so true. And what a perfect analogy. The rain on your wedding day means it's going to work out forever. Yeah, no.
That's hilarious. Just to make you stop crying. So I'm telling this story, and Lima's like, oh, Lima, you better never say that in front of like one of her friends. One of her friends is like a total bird nut. So it's so interesting that age, like 6, like she's obsessed with birds. But anyway, she's like, you could never say that in front of Olive. And I was like, well, I would never do that because I can read a room. And that's how like the whole conversation came about. And so I had to give him examples. I was like, well, so for example, if I didn't know Olive, didn't like loved birds, and I saw her face as I was telling this bird story, and she was kind of, shutting down or was upset or whatever, I would stop having that conversation. I would spit it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was like, yeah, so you have to look for visual cues as well. And, she's like, okay, got it.
I actually wrote that down because I think that's really powerful, not just for kids, but for us to do an episode on like exactly like what you said, the cues and stuff. How do you read the room? Because if you lack that ability, I'm telling you, like, it's up there with me or for me as communication, like your ability to communicate. Like, you have to be able to read the room. And read the room when you're communicating. Like, is it landing? Is it not? And be able to pivot. Like, there's a whole, like, that's so meaty, but I'm like, that's something that's really valuable for our listeners. So I wrote that down for us to talk about later. Yeah. But getting back to the emotional intelligence, this is another one that goes hand in hand with the self-awareness, is like the self-regulation. So paying attention to your emotions throughout the day and, just recognizing how you feel, the triggers, the mindfulness, and self-reflection, to better understand your emotional responses. That's like, so, boom.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
No, I just think that's so powerful, like self-reflection to better understand your responses.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So sometimes I self-reflect for too long, which I now know, and so like I have to talk to myself about like, wait a minute, why am I reflecting this long? Like, what about this bothered me so much?
Yeah.
Because obviously something then bothered me. And I'm kind of going through like this little thing in my head about a conversation a few days ago that I had honestly just with a friend. But like for some reason, like I keep going back on like the conversation. How could I have handled it better? And so I'm again processing what bothered me, and it's not exactly the conversation, but I was laughing when you said self-regulate, because there are times where I'm reading the room and don't care. But
yeah. Yeah.
But again, those are choices, right? Like I'm making the very like intentional choice to keep going, for whatever stupid reason I kept going. But it's hard. It is hard to like regulate yourself and bring yourself back in and be like, oh God, that wasn't good. Like, you stop that, So.
Yeah. But I'm sitting here thinking about, I can't think of a time because I can tell your face, like you have a read the room face, and I probably do too. But we just know each other so well by now. Like, I feel like I know, and we'll be messaging each other. I'm like, your face, I can tell you're feeling X, Y, Z. And you're like, shit, I got to fix it. And you'll do the same with, like, we have, you can, tell. But the only person I can say, and I know you do this too, that I don't read the room and I keep going intentionally just to get a rise out of them is my dad. And you do that to your mom.
With my mom. I do that with my mom.
So it's like we're able to read the room, and it's like, I know it's bothering you, but I keep going. And it's always usually when we're joking. So for a disclaimer for our listeners, like, we're not like, just running them into the ground with negativity things. It's just like when I talk about, all the shit that I did in high school and college that he doesn't know about, and I can see that he's like triggered, and I keep going and going and going. And it's, so I think there's the ability to read the room and, like you said, make a choice. Empathy. So I think we talk about this a lot, like put yourself in others' shoes and try to understand their emotions and their perspectives. And this one's really hard. Try to listen without judgment.
Very difficult.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah. We always put people in buckets, right? Like we have candidates in buckets. Like, so think about a candidate, maybe that just rubbed you the wrong way 5 years ago. Are you going to work with them today? Probably not. Well, guess what? That was 5 freaking years ago. We don't know what went down. We don't know what kind of day they had to make them do that. We don't know what kind of training or therapy they've gotten since, so, but it's hard. It's hard not to just go based off of what happened before.
Yeah. But then also on the flip side of that, like if you are emotionally intelligent, if you had a bad situation with a candidate, or you burned somebody, or you did X, Y, Z, how powerful is it to actually acknowledge that and say, hey, Brianna, I know when we spoke 5 years ago, I was blah, 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 blah. And like, whatever the situation was. But if somebody came to you like that, I know for a fact, it's like that first impression would go out the door that you had of them, and they would completely redeem themselves from just the self-awareness and reflection and coming to you with like the honesty and humbling themselves. Like, I think that's really, really, really powerful. So I think first impressions are still going to be important. They're always going to be important. I think people were always going to write you off for how you show up in a first impression. I do think it's possible to redeem yourself though. So I want to put that.
I do too. I do too. But I will also say that you're easily more redeemable with someone that has emotional intelligence.
For sure.
Because if they're not listening to you, and this is actually something that I just added in our sales module via Thriversity, was listening styles. You have to speak to people's listening styles. And like, that's its own separate thing. But like for me, like I value apologies. Like that is one of my human values. You know, so like, yeah, I'm there for that all the time. I want to take people out of buckets, but it's easily said than done, right?
And I love that you said, because you said this the other day too, like that you value apologies. And I'm like, what do I value? What is one of the things? And it's same but different. I value accountability. Like it's everything to me. Like accountability is the number probably redeeming quality that somebody can have with me is if you take accountability, personal, professional, it doesn't matter. And usually part of that could come with an apology, but also if you didn't do anything to me, not an apology. It's just like, hey, I know that like, and I mean, our producers heard me say this in some of our smaller team meetings where I've been like, hey, I know that I'm just in a mood today. Like I'm frustrated today. I'm coming off way. I'm really sorry that I'm coming off this way. It's not towards you guys, but like owning my emotions and owning like I'm in this funk today. I don't fucking know why. But I'm sorry if I'm just coming off as like short or just kind of blah with my negative energy. But I think that level of accountability, even though it's like, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I didn't owe anybody an apology per se, but I wanted to be accountable for the energy that I was bringing into that space, you know? So
I love that. I wish everybody did that. Like that is the definition of emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like being accountable for your own emotions and feelings and also knowing that they affect others. And like we were talking in a previous episode about, you know, you absorb the negative emotions of people. I'm very hyper aware that I do that. And so like, I know if I'm putting that out there, I know that it probably has that effect on other people too. Like common sense would tell me that if it happens to me, it probably happens to them. So I think accountability is huge, and it sometimes can come with an apology, sometimes not, depending on the situation. But I think owning your shit is the number one skill I value most. Like accountability and loyalty are like hand in hand for me.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll add something just controversial to ask you.
Yeah.
Empathy. So yes, empathy is like like such a biggie, especially in recruiting. I mean, everyday life, right?
Yeah.
I will say on the other side of the coin, it can feel very exhausting.
It can
feel exhausting. People can take advantage of your empathy. So I want to just note that. So I guess it's like, okay, if we're on the phone with a candidate and they're also just maybe having a day or you just had to give them hard feedback and you want to be empathetic and you want to show them that you care and you're a human. But here's the thing. What if it's been 30 minutes? You know what I mean? Like, what if it's been 30 minutes and you're like, shit, like I can't keep doing this. Like this is affecting my job, you know? Like I have to actually get off the phone. So I guess as in recruiting and talent, how can you still have empathy, but like in doses?
Yeah, you have to. Well, I think that's just it. You have to have empathy in doses. And I think this also goes back to a previous episode that we talked about. I think it's like you got to offer solutions. So if a candidate is kind of got a story, and I hate to say a woe is me story because that's not what that sounds negative. But if they've really got a story for you, because we hear these all the time from in our world, and not even just from candidates and different things, parts of our business. And it's like, okay, but what's the solution? You know what I mean? And that is also an emotional intelligence thing for me too. Is like, if you're going to go on and rant and vent and whatever, but like, what are you going to do about it? I think that's really, really powerful. So I think it's like, you can have enough empathy for a candidate to hear them out. And then I think it's like getting them to the point in the conversation where it's, okay, what's the solution? Where do we go from here? What do we do? What's our next step? Because I think also having empathy is not only like understanding their emotions and how they're feeling, but it's also like helping pull them out of it, because you know how it feels to be in that negative headspace or in that headspace where you're being ghosted or whatever the situation is. But I think offering solutions is empathy too, you know, which I know that's kind of controversial and can be contradictory to some people. When you Google like the definition of empathy, it's more about listening versus offering solutions. Whereas I feel like, okay, I'm going to listen and listen and listen, but I think it's very nice to be like, how can I help you? And here's what I recommend we do, or here's what I recommend you do. I think offering solutions is offering empathy sometimes.
Totally. And I think that you can be too empathetic sometimes. Yeah. It's like, okay, let's be realistic. Now, again, it all depends if it's professional or personal, but I don't know. I kind of go both ways. It's like, look, you also can't let people fall and always, like we said, the woe is me, but it's like, you can't let someone fall and crumble for that long. Like, if you're going to really be empathetic, I absolutely agree. There has to be some kind of help there. So, yeah, I like that. Okay, cool.
And I do. And going back to like, it is empathetic to help pick someone back up. It is. Yeah. Like, I've been there. I've been low where you are. I felt the way you felt. Let's get you back, you know? Yeah. And then social skills. I think that's a huge one for, you know, work on communication, verbal and nonverbal. So it's the read the room, what we've already talked about. I think that's huge. And we definitely will do a whole nother episode on that. And motivation. So setting clear goals for yourself and aligning your actions with your values, that is really, really sometimes hard to do in the workplace when you're an individual contributor, to align your actions with your values. And I think that kind of goes with the theme of the lazy girl jobs, like what we talked about. It's like, are you aligning your actions with your values 100% of the time? Are you always able to do that? I think there could be a lot of controversy with that, because I know that I have certainly stayed in jobs throughout my career, definitely earlier in my career, where I was in situations or asked to do things that didn't align with my values, and you have to go along anyway. Or I felt like I did. I shouldn't say I had to. I felt like I had to go along in order to keep my job, or in order to, climb the corporate ladder. And it was never like backstab it, do anything awful to anybody, but it's like, I wouldn't handle these things this way, or I wouldn't handle, these people this way, or this situation this way, but you're kind of forced to handle it based on how, you were told to do it or whatever. And I think that as I've gotten older and definitely further along in my career, I definitely can live more by, aligning my actions with my values in the workplace too. I think you can do both. I think it is possible.
Yeah. So, okay, let's also do another episode of this, because remember, just the Millionaire Recruiter program, where we help people start, their own agency, is we did go over my values and how I related that to my work goals.
Yeah.
So I think exactly what you're saying, actions, values, goals, like they all actually go hand in hand. But as I had told you in the group, I actually didn't come up with my own values until like 4 months ago. Like, it was kind of crazy. I'm 38 years old, and I've had values for my companies and stuff. It's like, I never sat to think about, what do I value as a human being? And the interesting thing is that it took like seconds for me to think about it.
Yeah.
But I just never thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, same. It's like, until we talk about it, I hadn't really thought about it, but you actually do think about it. You know these things about yourself, but you never put the two together, that like, these are the things that I value personally and professionally. Yeah. So recognizing and managing your emotions, we've talked a lot about that. So I definitely don't feel like we need to go into that further. This is a big one. Like, practice active listening, not listening to respond. You talk about that a lot in our different TMRPs and I know we talked about it in podcasts, webinars, all kinds of stuff, and we're all guilty of it, right? But I know you and I, like, our method, we're sitting here taking notes and stuff. But I'm telling you guys, like, for our listeners, in case you want to know a little fun fact about me, nothing triggers me more than like continuously being interrupted. Like, or when my clients are interrupted on a call, or, it's just, and exactly situations I'm talking about. But the interruption, I think it's like, don't just worry about what you're going to say, because then you're also not really practicing active listening either, if you're just listening to respond. So actively listen, really be mindful of your interruptions. And one thing I think people feel like, okay, if I don't speak up right now, they're going to progress the conversation along and my point will get missed. But I think that's a fair thought process. But you and I both know, because we've done it, you can always walk it back. You can always say, hey, I want to go back to what we were saying here. And you can still make your point without cutting somebody off. So I think it's really, really important to just practice active listening, especially within the recruiting process. If you're a candidate and you get feedback, or if you're talking to a hiring manager, which these are the situations when it's most stressful. If you think about interviews, and candidates really are thinking about the next thing that they're going to say and how they're going to answer this question or that question. And I think it kind of, like, interviews specifically can force you to not really be an active listener as a candidate, because you're just like so worried about the next thing you're going to say and saying the right thing, And so I think as a hiring manager, because we're talking about the recruiting process as a whole, I think as a hiring manager, really being mindful of that, like really being mindful of the questions that you're asking somebody. And are you active listening, or are you just trying to get through your questions that you need to ask a candidate too?
Right. And then become like a waiter and waitress.
Exactly.
Well, I think that we were taught, or who knows how or why, but we were taught that the person that speaks the most is the most important. So I think people interrupt because it's like, I need to get my point across. And also, I want to make sure this person or the team knows that I'm important and I'm valuable, because like, if you don't speak up, nobody hears you or sees you, So I don't know how to like combat that much. But yeah, I would say the best training tool I've had is that whenever I hear something, like, for example, I wrote down points equal important. So I know what I wrote down, I will understand when I read again, because I want to talk to you, but I needed to be present to listen to you, because how disrespectful is it? And I know this drives us both, Trish, drive everyone crazy, is when you're talking and then someone asks you a question you actually just told them about. Like you just tell them that answer and then they ask you that. I think it is insanely rude. I hate it.
It's rude. Or if you ask somebody a question and they like answer it in a way that you're like, you have no idea what I was talking about.
Nope.
Like you didn't listen at all to anything that I was talking about based on the answer that you gave me. Like you weren't listening at all. And I have seen that and personally experienced that with hiring managers in the recruiting process as a candidate. So back in the day, but I'm like, I can tell based on, because we're taught in interviews, you ask questions, right? That's the good look. You're supposed to ask questions. And so I have been in situations where I'm like asked a hiring manager a question based on something they just said, and they weren't listening at all. And so it's like, I can tell that you were not listening to anything I said. So I think emotional intelligence is also one of the things that we don't have on here, but it's also being respectful, like respecting each other's time, respecting each other's thoughts, feelings, points. I think that's a nice way to actually frame all of this up, because I know we're at time here, but that, I guess if anything, that could be my broke to boss tip, is just within practice, respectful communication, respectful everything. And that is emotional intelligence. If you treat others, it sounds so basic, but treat others how you want to be treated in the recruiting process, as a hiring manager, as a candidate, as a recruiter, treat others how you want to be treated. And I think big one, communication is key. I still go back to I would like to believe that people can handle the truth. I have this moment, I don't know if you've seen what is that movie where it's like, you can't handle the truth.
Handle the truth, yeah.
Yeah. I like to believe that people give them the opportunity before they can't handle it, before you label them as they can't handle it. And so I think emotional intelligence, and maybe that's the emotional intelligence part of me that likes to believe that people can handle the truth if it's done in a tactful way and respectful way. I feel like people are capable and can handle a lot more. But yeah, I think in summary, this is some really good stuff that we've talked about. This has probably been one of my favorite episodes, and we could even probably do a part 2, 3, 4, because I think it's so relative to everyone, not even just recruiting. Everybody should practice emotional intelligence. And I think we should provide our listeners with some tips and, the summary and bio of stuff of what we recommend if you want to work on emotional intelligence. You do.
Yeah. It would be great. Let's do an episode on this. Jess, can you hear me? Let's do everyone always asks about different scenarios. And here's the thing, there's thousands and hundreds of different scenarios and we still haven't seen them all today because it changes, right? But we should probably talk about maybe 3 to 6 different scenarios, almost like role play. Hey, this is a real scenario. How do you handle this with emotional intelligence?
Love it.
Because get triggered all
Oh my God. I'm going to wear my wig, my barb wig. I'm going to come in barb on. Oh yeah. No, if you're saying role play and we could get oh God.
Not that you just think of barb when you hear role play.
No, because I'm thinking about really how to handle these situations. I'm about to rock your fucking world with this wig and with these role plays of things that we're going to say to each other. That will probably be one of our funnest episodes. And I hope everyone watches. But yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. We're really, really grateful and appreciative. Love your comments, feedback, subscribe, tell your friends. And yeah, thanks for listening all the way through to the Broach Boss Tip. Yeah.
See you next Tuesday. Thanks all.
Thanks, y'all.